The 7 new members of the Constitutional Court in Benin Republic of the 7th Legislature were sworn in on Tuesday, the 6th of June, 2023. A local musician in Burkina Faso is hoping to make education more accessible in his country by using a portion of his profit to support the construction of schools. It is the season of rain in Benin Republic, but mango vendors are going through lots and lots of challenges considering lack of appropriate preservative methods. Good afternoon, our dear viewers. Welcome to the 1 p.m. news edition with Hazel Ogoigbe, coming to you live and direct from Golfe TV Africa here in the city of Cotonou. Now to the news in detail, starting from the local scene. Now, following the appointment in accordance with Article 115 of the Constitution of Benin Republic, the 7 new members of the Constitutional Court of the 7th Legislature were sworn in on Tuesday, the 6th of June, 2023. Now, the swearing-in ceremony to mark the official assumption into office took place at the Marina Palace, presided over by the head of state, President Patrice Talon. More information in the following commentary. Following the appointment in accordance with Article 115 of the Constitution, the 7 new members of the Constitutional Court of the 7th Legislature were sworn in on Tuesday, the 6th of June, 2023. The swearing-in ceremony to mark the official assumption of office took place at the Marina Palace, presided over by the head of state, Patrice Talon. A completely new constitutional court would take office on Tuesday, the 6th of June, appointed by the President of the Republic and the Bureau of the National Assembly. The 7 wise men of the 7th tenure were sworn in accordance with the provision of the article. Following the reminder of the text and the laws of the Constitutional Court, the 7 new members of the court solemnly swore before the President of the Republic and the Bureau of the National Assembly to fulfill their duties effectively and faithfully, to exercise them with complete impartiality, in respect of the Constitution, to keep deliberations and votes secret, not to take any public position, and not to give any consultation in matters falling within the jurisdiction of the court. The 7 new members were sworn in on Tuesday in front of the members of the Bureau. 7 members, while agreeing to fulfill the noble mission while remaining confident in their ability to play their role properly. And the President stated that he would like to congratulate them on their appointment. On behalf of the entire Beninese people, they expressed their confidence and their gratitude for having agreed to take on this task. The President went on to say, and I quote, that we have no doubt that you will assume this office with responsibility and honor. Later in his speech, the head of state also had a few words for the outgoing mandate, and he said, I would also like to take this opportunity to extend to the outgoing councillors the congratulations and gratitude of the entire Beninese people for the mission entrusted to them, which they have carried out with honor and dignity, to the satisfaction of Benin Republic as an entire nation. The swearing-in ceremony, which consecrated the 7 wise men of the Constitutional Court in their 7th tenure in office, ended with exchanging of warm pleasantries and a family photo. Crossing over to the news in brief, Société Générale has announced the conclusion of agreements with 2 African banking groups to sell 4 of its subsidiaries to them. Now, they are found in Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Mauritania, and Chad. Société Générale announced on Friday the conclusion of its agreement with 2 African banks to sell 4 of its subsidiaries. Now, 2 of the subsidiaries will be in Congo and Equatorial Guinea at the Vista Group. The others in Mauritania and Chad are the Chorus Group. Now back, of course, to the local scene, talking about mangoes. The abundance of mangoes in Benin's market proves that we are in the middle of mango season. The season generally runs from April to August to September each year. In addition to the markets, mangoes are sold along the main roads, in small shops in the neighborhood, and even on the trays of street vendors. Now, Benin grows many different varieties of mangoes, and the vendors are obviously very knowledgeable about the various species of mango as they recommend them to their customers. Now, this commentary talks about the challenges mango vendors encounter during their trade. The abundance of mangoes on Benin's market proves that they are in the middle of mango season. The season generally runs from April to August to September each year. In addition to the markets, mangoes are sold along the main roads in small shops in the neighborhoods and even on the trays of street vendors. Benin Republic grows many different varieties of mango, and the vendors are obviously very knowledgeable about the various species, and they recommend them to their customers. The list of mangoes produced in Benin is inexhaustible, and it should be noted that each of these mangoes has its own characteristics in terms of taste, texture, and ripening period. The price of mango ranges between 100 francs CFA to 500 francs and from 200 to 1,000 francs for a set of 5 mangoes. The mangoes are sold according to their quality and variety, and the affordability of these products is recognized by the consumers. However, apart from the availability of mangoes in the market, there are many difficulties that only wholesalers and retailers traverse. The transportation of goods after purchase and the consequence of urbanization are some of the major challenges encountered by retailers and wholesalers. Added to this is the lack of sales in the market. Those involved in the market sector are complaining about the losses they make daily as a result of the low sales turnout. To remedy this lack of mango conservation, which explains this considerable waste of resources, RAIN is urging the relevant authorities to look into the matter in order to find solutions that will ultimately benefit the whole nation. The search for effective means of conservation, provision for processing, exploitation, and organization of the sector could considerably reduce the losses recorded and reassure marketing. Like cotton, soya, and pineapple, the mango sector could be an economic source of development to Benin Republic. Crossing over to the news in brief, Nigerian President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on Wednesday defended the West African nation's decision to stop subsidizing fuel, a move that already is adding to economic hardship of Nigerians by pushing up prices of transportation and major commodities. Now, the money saved by ending the decade-long subsidy last week will help the government's effort to fight poverty and its initiatives, Tinubu told governors in a meeting in the capital city of Abuja. He appealed for patience even though hardship is biting hard on millions of Nigerian citizens. Still on the Nigerian scene, tomato farmers in Nigeria are seeking improved methods to reduce post-harvest losses as authorities look to increasing cold storage facilities. Nigeria is the largest producer of tomatoes in sub-Saharan Africa.
These scientists want biotechnology legalized in Uganda. They argue that it's the only way to end Uganda's hunger problems.
The farmers have been suffering and the crop has been reducing drastically. We are not even getting 50% of the yields we used to get like 20 years ago, and the trend continues. So this is a very welcome technology on specific crops where conventional breeding has failed.
But their efforts are already facing stiff resistance from food rights activists. The activists worry that there could be contamination of indigenous seeds through cross-fertilization, and local farmers will become dependent on GMO seed producers for herbicides.
How do we make sure that the mismanagement in the cropping system doesn't end up in the ecosystem and we lose out on the fisheries? Okay? How do we put what safeguards are in there?
Genetically modified organisms are plants or animals whose genetic makeup has been modified in a laboratory using technology. According to the country's export promotion agency, the demand for Uganda's organic foods on the international market is steadily going up. Farmers now fear that if engineered crops are introduced, they could lose out on this comparative advantage and face stiff competition from countries already producing genetically modified organisms. The new bill will not only stop the cultivation, but also prohibit importation of genetically modified organisms in the country.
we should rather eat food as medicine, not really medicine as food, because remember, you want money, meaning you want to buy things that may not be of health to you. So I think the first priority should be to production of organic and consumption of organic foods.
The Ugandan government has already put in place an organic farming policy to guide farmers. But adopting genetically modified methods is a growing trend on the continent. In neighboring Kenya, attempts by the promoters to cultivate and import genetically modified organisms is in high gear. For Uganda, despite the varied perceptions, the time for trials could soon be over.
Away from that, crossing over to the news in brief. Now, the Senegalese government announced on Tuesday that it was temporarily closing its consulates generals abroad following attacks on a number of them against a backdrop of high tensions in Senegal. Now, the precautionary measures follows a series of attacks recently perpetrated against Senegal's diplomatic and consular missions abroad, notably in Paris, Bordeaux, France, Milan, Italy, and New York, stated the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in a statement posted on social media networks. Now, it reported serious damage, particularly in Milan, where it said the passport and ID card production machines had been destroyed. Now, talking about the global scene, UNHCR and the Norwegian Refugee Agency say conflict and flooding have forced many into Somalia to leave their homes. Now, aid agencies say over 1 million people displaced in Somalia since January. More information in the following report.
Like many other people in this camp for the internally displaced in Beledweyne, Amina Abdullahi was displaced 3 times in just the past 2 years, first by tribal skirmishes, then by severe drought, and finally by flash floods that followed recent heavy rains. She faces many challenges as she tries to rebuild her life at this IDP camp.
We have no proper shelter here, no clean water, no health centers, and even hospitals nearby for pregnant mothers to deliver in, just makeshift dispensaries. So there are several challenges, but we pray to the Almighty.
This medical team from Beledweyne's main hospital comes here every day to provide much-needed healthcare services to the displaced families, but they are not enough, given the many challenges they face, including latest one, an outbreak of diarrhea in the IDP camp.
We provide assistance in dealing with diseases like diarrhea, infections, and skin diseases. Most of the residents here are suffering from skin disease complications, and we provide them with free drugs with volunteer medical officers on standby.
Local authorities already face multiple crises, which have displaced thousands from big towns like Beledweyne. However, they are trying their level best to assist people like Amina get basic services, such as clean water supplies and proper shelter.
It's a difficult situation. People displaced by conflict in the Hiran region to the city were again displaced by flooding. But we are doing all we can in our capacity as the local council.
According to UNHCR, more than 1 million Somalis have been displaced in the country during the past 4 months alone. Those forced to flee arriving in big overcrowded cities like Mogadishu, which are already hosting millions displaced by drought and conflict.
Away from that, crossing over to Kenya, still of course on the news in brief. Now, Kenya will convert a vast coastal forest where the bodies of more than 250 people linked to a doomsday cult have been exhumed into a National Memorial Society, minister said. Now, the discovery of mass graves in Shakahola Forest, a 325 hectares bushland that lies in the inland from Indian Ocean town of Malindi, has shocked Kenya. Now, a cult leader, or people call him a pastor, Pastor Paul Nthengi Mackenzie, is facing various charges in the grisly case, accused of driving his followers to death by preaching the gospel that starvation was the only path to see God. The forest where grave crimes have been committed will now remain as it was, Interior Minister Kithuri said on Tuesday. On the South African scene, African leaders are ready for mediation in Russia and Ukraine. Now, African leaders are seeking to help end the Russian-Ukrainian war, agreed on Monday for a mediation mission in mid-June to Russia and Ukraine. Now, the South African president announced on Tuesday last month, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa indicated that his Russian and Ukrainian counterparts, Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky, had given the agreement to receive this peace mission composed of 6 African leaders. More information in the following commentary. African leaders seeking to help end the war agreed on Monday for a mediation mission in mid-June to Russia and Ukraine, the South African presidency announced on Tuesday. Last month, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa indicated that his Russian and Ukrainian counterparts Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky had given the agreement to receive this peace mission composed of 6 African leaders. The latter met virtually on Monday and agreed to propose elements to Russia and Ukraine for a ceasefire and lasting peace in the region, said a press release from the service of the President of South Africa. Marcelo Rebelo do Susu, who thanks Mr. Ramaphosa for his role in the initiative, for his part underlined the importance of listening to both parties and telling them this is the African vision of a war that is not only a European war, but rather it is a globalized war. The members of the mission identified last month by South African President are besides the latter, the leader of Congo-Brazzaville, the leader of Egypt, President of Senegal, Uganda, and Zambia. The head of the state of Comoros, Azali Assoumani, attended Monday's meeting in his capacity as the current chairman of the African Union. Africa is the hardest hit by the increase in cereal prices and the consequence of the war between Russia and Ukraine on the world trade. Away from that, let's talk about someone deciding to use his position to add value to his immediate society. Now, a local musician in Burkina Faso is hoping to make education more accessible in Burkina Faso by using a portion of his profits to support the construction of schools in Burkina Faso. He hopes the initiative will reduce reliance on international assistance in the educational sector.
One concert, one school. The initiative by the local Burkinabe musician is set to benefit many learners in villages in the country's central eastern region. Part of earnings from his shows are being used to build schools in places where such facilities did not exist.
Today, with the insecurity here in Burkina Faso, we are witnessing a migration of populations from the north to the center-east. When you arrive here in the center-east, you see that there are classrooms initially designed to accommodate 30 pupils, but which end up with 80 pupils. The classes are overcrowded, so we decided to carry out the project, one concert, one school. A school to give a quality education in good conditions to the thousands of children living in this area.
I wasn't lucky enough to go to a state school. We only had 2 private schools in the village, and they are a bit expensive. That's why people have difficulty enrolling in school. So I can see that this project is going to be more profitable for the future of the village. It will be very, very beneficial.
If successful, Guba hopes to expand the project to include clinics and nurseries. The scheme has brought other benefits too.
I'm very happy with the availability of drinking water. We used to travel long distances to get water, but with the new school, we now have a borehole and we're really happy. We pray that God will always give strength to the initiator.
Burkina Faso is struggling to contain an insurgency waged by militants. Insecurity in the country has displaced over 2 million people in recent years, according to the government. It has also reduced access to education. Aid agencies say over 6,000 learning institutions have been forced to close down due to the problem. The Norwegian Refugee Council estimates that more than 1 million children have been affected.
Crossing over to the sports scene, the manifestation of a deep societal problem, racism, is a decade-long-old issue in soccer. Now, predominantly in Europe, but also seen all around the world, this has been amplified by the reach of social media and a growing willingness for people to call out racism. More information in the following report.
Football has often seen the manifestation of the age-old problem of racism and the counter-protests against it. It follows the scandalous abuse of Real Madrid star Vinicius Jr. last month. Footballers past and present have been speaking out.
With racism, it's not something that happens very often, but every time it happens, it sort of like knocks you back and floors you, because just when you think everything's okay, it's a reminder that it's not. It's a reminder how some people actually see you, and it's not the case that it's everyone, but even if it's 1%, like for the amount of people involved in the game of football, 1% is a lot of people.
And other English footballers who've been on the receiving end of abuse say they feel let down by important bodies.
Looking back retrospectively, you say, you know, the TV companies failed us, the radio failed us, the PFA failed us, really. They didn't make a stand against it. They just said, well, bury our heads in the sand, it'll go away eventually. You know, it didn't go away. The players and the fans had to get it all going and get the Kick Racism Out of Football campaign going and get people on board and stop the fans from 5,000 people behind the goal all singing, black this, black that. You know, that's difficult. It's difficult to play in front of. You just had to, you had to be tough. You had to be resilient in those days.
Former Chelsea player Paul Canaville faced such abuse 40 years ago and says black players were completely unprotected.
I think now, today, players like myself, black players, young black players, shouldn't be quiet. They should say something right there and then. And I didn't at that time, so I've had to learn from that. And that's probably what I teach and share with these young up-and-coming players now, black players.
But players such as Vinicius and many fans now call out the abuse when they see it intent on tackling racism.
Welcome back. You're tuned into the 1 p.m. news on Golfe TV Africa, and welcome to the African Newspaper Review. Now, today we're going to be starting on the front page of The Punch, Nigeria, touching the stories that are making the rounds on the African scene. We have The Punch, the front page, Liberia, The Nation, Malawi, just to mention a few. Now, let's talk about this very pressing issue. Tinubu orders Shatima and governors to work on salaries and palliatives. And Start Work tells NEC, Tinubu tells NEC as 22 governors and marketers back subsidy removal. Now, this story says, Oyo planned salary increase. Labour gives June 19 ultimatum on 200,000 wages on the pages of The Punch, Nigeria. Now, this story says Tinubu and APC move to appease anti-zoning members. That's, of course, on the National Assembly. Now, this story says NNPCL to cut fuel imports from August on the pages of The Punch, Nigeria. And this story says poor debt-ridden states give government jumbo exit package on the pages of The Punch, Nigeria. Now, if, of course, you look at this picture, you would see the president, the vice president, and also his SGF and 22 governors taking a family picture. Now, let's go into the pages of the front page, Liberia. Let's see the stories that are making the rounds in Liberia today. What stories are making the round? Okay, the story says, Liberia Revenue Authority confirms to Front Page Africa the closure of the oil and gas company but denies political interference. Why Billy T Streamex was closed. If you know you're curious about that, you could of course check the front page Liberia. Now let's move away from the front page. Let's go over to the pages of the Guardian Post Cameroon. What is happening in Cameroon today? Okay, here goes. Now the story says over 1,000 Cameroonians seek asylum in Belgium within 6 months. That is a large number of Cameroonians seeking asylum. And the story says Antique engages stakeholders to build Cameroon's digital sovereignty on the pages of the Guardian Post Cameroon. Now this story says after 100 dreaded Amber generals killed, shouldn't these last two standing surrender? A rhetorical question on the Guardian Post. And the story says ICT University acquires 100 million francs CFA worth pedagogic bus. That is, of course, a positive development on the pages of the Guardian Post Cameroon. I'm going to be moving over to the pages of the Nation Malawi. Let's see the stories that are making the headlines on the pages of the Nation Malawi. All right, the story says no electricity for 17.7 million Malawians as government races to meet 1,000 megawatts target by 2024. Now, the story says 4 days without cholera cases and death. And the story says funds and education CSO tells government on the pages of the Nation Malawi. Now, crossing away from the Nation Malawi, let's move over to my favorite daily every single day. And that is the pages of the Citizen Tanzania. All right, let's go. On the pages of the Citizen Tanzania, the story says multi-billion investments to boost barley farming, and it says a new dawn awaits over 17,500 barley growers in the country, following yesterday's joint announcement by Tanzania's Breweries Limited and 3 ministries of 96 billion shillings investment in modern malting plant. In Tanzania, there's really been an upward investment in investing in agriculture, modernized agriculture, bringing a whole lot of impact in the amount of money, the GDP in Tanzania. Now, this story says solid waste can create thousands of green jobs across East Africa. And the story says why there is debate on Dubai firm's port proposal. And the last story says government debt servicing to gobble up 10.5 trillion in 2023/2024 on the pages of the Citizen Tanzania. And with that, our dear viewers, we conclude today's edition of the African Newspaper Review on Golfe TV Africa. Thanks for tuning in. Join me by 6 p.m. for Vocal Point. I'm Hazel Ogoigbe. Enjoy the rest of your day.